Hi everyone, welcome to the second session of Digital Trust Alliance. So today actually we'll be discussing about cloud computing and cloud technologies, and thank you very much for joining with us in this evening. So without taking much of your time, I'll briefly introduce our panelists who are joining. So ladies first, so we have Piumi Ranasinghe, who's the Chief Customer Officer of OREL Cloud. So Piumi has been in the technology industry for a very long time, and she has been handling business aspects, business development and growth aspects for various technology companies in Sri Lanka. Then we have Lasantha Priyankara, who's a director of Digital Trust Alliance and currently working at Sysco Labs as a security architect. And he's the president of ISC Squad, the Colombo chapter as well. And Lasantha has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to cloud security, information security, and cyber security. Then we have Shabeer Shiyam, who's the Assistant Secretary of Cloud Security Alliance Sri Lanka chapter, and he's the Chief Technical Strategy Officer of South Asian Technologies as well. I mean, people in the Sri Lanka technology industry know Shabeer very well. So he has been with customers and partners and principals for a very long time. So we are actually covering different angles and different perspectives in today's session. So I'll be asking various questions to cover the business aspect, security aspect, technology aspects, strategy, and context in both public and private sectors in Sri Lanka. And if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A panel, or if you need, you can post the questions in the chat as well. Right. So I'll jump into, and I need to introduce myself as well. So I'm Neranjan, and I'm the CEO of Just In Time Group, and I'm not working actually, Senior Vice President of Digital Trust Alliance as well. So, right. So I'll first ask a general question from all three of you. So you can just give a very brief answer. So when we say cloud, so what does come to your mind? I mean, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? So I'll start with Piumi.
First of all, Neranjan, thank you for the opportunity to be part of this webinar. When I say cloud, actually, the actual cloud that comes to my mind is us.
Yes, that's a very good answer.
And that's the first thing that comes. But of course, moving into technology, we've never thought about cloud as such, right? We never thought of where is our data being saved, that we use Facebook, we use Gmail. It never occurred to us until recently. And now with education, of course, we have started to question where is our data really stored at. So that is my answer to you for your first question.
Okay. Then Shabeer?
Yeah. Hi guys. Thanks again for having me. First thing that came to my mind was also exactly what Piumi said, right? And as I think we're all still children at heart. But then again, being going into what we actually are talking about today, cloud. Well, I see it as an enabler compared to what it was back then. Back then, we were tied down to setting up environments here on-prem and a lot of other factors if you think about it. But cloud has actually been a real good enabler, and I think one of the eye openers was during COVID when we saw the most usage of cloud here in Sri Lanka, when cloud being your O365s to environments running. There's a lot of other reasons that you can use cloud for. So that's at least in my take in brief. I think it's an enabler.
Okay. I think that's a really good definition to think of it as an enabler. Yeah. Asantha?
Yeah, with a skepticism of a security guy, but the first thing came into my mind is that very famous meme, it's other people's computers. So yes, I fully agree with you. It is an enabler. It does a whole bunch of things for you. And if you look at all the vendors that are out there, well established, they're doing a much better job that you would personally ever do in your local environment. However, there are certain risks and benefits involved. So which we will discuss as the conversation goes along.
Okay, right. So, okay, let's jump into the real question. So, I think when we talk about cloud, I mean, even for us, for in certain occasions, so I mean, we really start to question about the cloud adaptation in Sri Lanka. We really think whether the people are actually adapting cloud, whether people are migrating, whether they are going ahead with these facilities, so especially in the government sector. So, Piumi, I think you are working in a cloud service provider, so you get the chance to talk to different people who are from both public and private sector. So how do you see the cloud adaptation in Sri Lanka, where it is heading, how it's moving, the trends, the thought process? So how do you see that?
Great question, Ranjan. So, having first-hand experience in getting involved in cloud adaptation in Sri Lanka, so with COVID, as previously mentioned, there is a growth, and research shows that there's a 35% year-on-year growth in Sri Lanka in terms of adapting to cloud. So, which is a big number, right? But what is actually being moved into cloud is a different question. So, this could be, simple use of emails and little things, right? And in a survey done in 2023 by ICTA, it says that over 60% enterprises have already started using cloud in some form. And you see the banking sector, the telco and retail are the most fast moving towards cloud when you take the
So you said
industry.
65%, right?
60%. Over 60%
60%.
enterprises are using cloud in some form. So this is a
Right.
research done by ICTA, and this is what their finding is. And what we also see is that, of course, banks and large corporates, they move their applications onto cloud. They start off with the applications like CRMs, the HR, not the main core details or confidential details, but the supporting applications and omni-channel, those sort of applications are moved onto cloud, or else the technology is such that it comes already as a cloud solution and it's not on-prem anymore. With that said, right, on the public sector side, you see that there is an interest to move to cloud. However, the decision making is not so as fast as the private sector, given the conditions, given the compliances that they need to comply with. In again 2023, ResearchGate has done another research where they have found that 87% of IT companies have moved into cloud. So their development or their hosting, all of that is on cloud. So these are all good numbers if you look at it. However, legacy systems that are already running in organizations, especially if you take the government sector, or the readiness, are you cloud ready, or previously invested infrastructure, because there's a high cost that they have already put on to buy the infrastructure. And then the data sovereignty part, the compliances, vendor locking, and the compliances, security reasons are also a factor for people to hesitate to move to cloud. So to put it in simple, more education, structural education is need to push the market towards adopting cloud. The conversation is there. However, the decision-making process is slower for various reasons, which I'm sure we'll touch upon eventually. But the important factor is, even in Parliament in the recent past, yesterday or day before, there was a conversation going about cloud and where data centers are. So we are having the right conversation, but it's a matter of now speeding things up so that the trend becomes faster.
Right. Thanks, Piumi. So you brought up some really interesting statistics. Year-on-year growth of 35% in cloud adaptation, and enterprises, 60% of enterprises at least using some form of cloud. That's very interesting. And I also listened to that conversation in the parliament. I don't know whether it actually, I mean, the topic is good, but I don't know whether the whether they discuss the right things, but at least they are discussing those technical subjects in the parliament right now. That's very interesting. So you explain certain challenges and difficulties in cloud technologies and various things that people see. So Shabeer, I would like to ask one thing from you. Now, when it comes to the cloud infrastructure and on-prem infrastructure, so we can see one barrier as architectural difference in the on-prem between on-prem and cloud infrastructure. What are these architectural differences in normal on-prem environment and the cloud environment? Maybe differences in applications and adaptations, and how should maybe people adapt to cloud native applications, etc. So what is your view on that?
Yeah, so I think this also goes back to what I mentioned earlier, because back then traditionally we were always bound to have on-prem setups, and we were always beefing that system up, right? Every time we wanted something, every time we wanted new, more either throughput or more utilization or more RAM, whatever, it was always beefing that particular technical, that particular server up. So that was just, just scaling up vertically, and that's about it. And that brought obviously multiple sets of challenges, right, in the past for us, and those were keeping those systems running, from uptime to updating them to managing. There's so much complications that we had. So now when it comes to this whole cloud native application part of it, it's more easier, right? So as long as you have a method to get your data up there, and you have a method to migrate your information up there, and as long as you have your security, which, like that's not the way rightly said, as long as you have security also in mind, if all of those are in place, it's an enabler, like I mentioned, right? So it's compared to traditional environments where all these systems are coupled and this database runs on that same server and having to back it up and all that. In a cloud native application environment, these are all, it works in more like a microservices architecture, right? It breaks down these functionalities into simple independent services. So it's easy for you all to choose whether you want to take a container and do something, or maybe it helps with your CI/CD pipelines. That is in terms of continuous integration, continuous deployment of whatever these applications are. So cloud native applications helps to horizontally scale as well, and has no issues with downtime or updating and stuff like that, given that of course these data centers are running, which of course the CSPs are doing the best they can to keep it running, of course, right? So due to that reason, the chances of these having downtimes are also eliminated. So if you think about, like, for people who are leveraging these cloud platforms, like developers or anyone who's using these platforms, it's easier for them to do it. And if you assume from the perspective of a developer, they are able to. It's all modular, so they can choose only what they want to do, what they want to, what areas that they want to focus on, and actually focus on those. Because if not, you're trying to manage the traditional IT part of it, the hardware of it, the resources of it. There's a lot of other things that also falls onto the plate of someone who's leveraging that system right now. But when it comes to a cloud native application, there's that burden is so much lesser. So I feel like that's why I said it's an enabler. So like you said, the architectural differences. There's so much in terms of where it resides to, how it connects to APIs to, so on and so forth. But in terms of key differentiators, I basically feel that it's easier when it's on the cloud. But of course, that depends on what they're using that for too as well, right? Depends on what they're running on those clouds. If it's utilizing a lot of resources, then of course the cost could be higher than having it on-prem. So it all varies. There's a lot of factors that anyone would have to consider before they obviously move to cloud. But depending on what they want to move to cloud, depending on their use cases, depending on who's using this particular cloud platform as well, these can all vary, my perspective.
Yeah. So I think, Shabeer, adding on to what you said, we all are running businesses, so either helping people to run businesses. So whatever the technology or platform we use, first we need to have these business objectives in mind. So we need to see whether a cloud platform or platform satisfies our business requirements and helping to reduce cost to optimize our processes. So maybe reduce the market response time or whatever. So keeping that business objectives in mind is very, very important. Yeah. And you spoke about various advantages in cloud platforms as well. And I think sometimes people don't see these advantages because of certain misconceptions they have. So, Lasantha, what do you see as these misconceptions? We can call them myths even. Well, like, what are these misconceptions people normally have towards cloud platforms or cloud adaptation?
Thanks, Neranjan. So the first thing I can flag is people do not understand it is a paradigm shift when you're moving from on-prem to cloud. They expect everything to be as it was in the on-prem environment to be in the cloud. And without that paradigm shift, everything is a microservice and you need to focus on everything with a zero trust mindset. It doesn't work. The way I like to explain this phenomenon is imagine you living your whole life in a far village with a half an acre land and a house in the middle of it. So you're so used to do things in a certain way, and suddenly you're being put in a managed apartment in the middle of Colombo, or worse, in London, right? The things you have done in your like half an acre land, you can't do here. The space is limited. There are certain rules and regulation or the procedures to be followed. You can't just invite anybody in. You have to take proper approval from the management of the apartment. So if you think of that analogy, moving from on-prem to cloud just answers that perfectly. The problem I see is people don't understand that, and they expect to do all the things they have done there in the cloud environment. And the worst of it all, they expect, okay, we are in cloud, everything's managed, so security is sorted for us. That is the biggest misconception I see people have. Okay, we are moving to cloud, so we don't have to worry about security.
Yeah. So I think it's like you expect your new girlfriend or boyfriend to behave in the same way as your old girlfriend or boyfriend behaved. I think maybe something like that. So yeah. So
I think we should quote
good
Neran for that.
Sorry.
We should quote you, Matang, and put it online for that, what you just said.
Right. So I think, I think we have a good foundation. So let's try to talk more about different strategies that we can adopt to, practical things that we can adopt when we are migrating to cloud or choosing the right cloud environment. So I think Piumi has been helping customers in Sri Lanka with OREL Cloud to help them to migrate into different cloud environments and set up different infrastructure configurations as well. So Piumi, some people want to have their primary data center in cloud, and some people want to have their DR site in cloud. I mean, some people want to go ahead with hybrid cloud. Or there are different things that you need to adapt. So we don't need to explain the basic principles of public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud. I think most of the people are well aware of that. But when you approach different customers, so how do you strategize this? I mean, what are the key strategic considerations that a company should have when they want to adapt public cloud or private cloud or hybrid cloud? So what's your take on that?
Yeah, so this is actually a very timely question because people really don't know the differences. So not going to the nitty-gritty details of what exactly a sovereign cloud or a private cloud is, I would say there are about 5 key things that we would need to consider. So starting off is first with the compliance and data residency, right? So what is the requirement, the regulatory compliances? Is it a bank? Is it a telco? Is it healthcare, right? What are the guidelines that you need to adhere to? And what are the sensitive data that you have? And based on that, you need to decide and choose what type of a cloud that you need to move into, whether it's a hybrid cloud or a public cloud, or whether it's a private cloud, or if it's even a sovereign cloud for that matter. Second is security data sensitivity. As I said, moving from the first one, it said how secure this data should be, whose data is it, right? And what are we exposing to the outside? At what control level do we have to have? And taking on from what Lasantha said, when people move into cloud, they expect everything to be encrypted and secure. But a simple thing like you keeping your password out for anybody to see is enough for a breach to happen, right? So it's keeping money and saying, hey, come and rob me. So you can't expect a cloud to be secure like that. You also need to do your part to be secured. So that's on the data security. And then the workload classifications is the third one. Understanding what you're really putting into cloud and specifying it, because based on that, you can actually maximize and optimize using cloud. So if it is data like marketing related analytics, then what you have, then you can put it in a public cloud where the cost is less. And or you can use, if it's the sensitive data, you put it on a private cloud. Or if it is like government data and citizen data, then you would probably want to consider data residency plus a sovereign cloud. So classification of data is another ingredient to look at. Fourthly is the cost model and budgeting. This is something that people don't think through properly. So all they want is cheap. It should be cost effective, but that's not the wording or the proposition to look at. It's all about the OPEX and what are you getting out of it and how can you get the maximum out of what you are spending. For example, even if you are investing in upfront, for a capex, right? On a cloud environment, when you do a pay as you go, let's take $1,000. If your full investment is $1,000, but in a cloud, you may only invest $900 at first. So the $900 is remaining for you to invest. So the finance also getting involved and understanding the costing model and how can you optimize using the right cloud option is also an important part. Finally, the future readiness, right? What is your business into? How are you going to grow into? Are you going to use new technologies? Are you going to use machine learning, IoT, AI? So cloud is enabled, the technology is updated. So what sort of technology do you need? So based on that, the future requirements of the organization, you need to decide what sort of cloud. So in simple, when I look at it and I speak to customers, these are the things that I ask from them: your future readiness, the data that you're going to have, what sort of applications are you going to run, and the security side of it, and what sort of security are you looking at, and what is your current security infrastructure at the moment. So we have examples of even banks moving into cloud, and even sometimes public cloud, depending on the data that they are having on the cloud. So these are the 5 points that I would say one would consider when moving into adapting into cloud and figuring out whether it's a public cloud or a hybrid cloud, sovereign cloud, or whether you want data residency.
Right. So, Piumi, I would like to drill down a bit more into what you said. I mean, like as a person who's actually selling cloud infrastructure solutions in Sri Lanka, so I'm sure that when you meet a typical customer, they would ask a lot of questions about cost optimization, whether I would save money, whether I would have more security, whether I would have less security, whether my solution will be scalable, or whether I would enhance my customer experience, because all the customers want to ultimately make profits, right?
Yeah.
So by taking scalability, customer experience, cost and security, so what advices do you give customers? I mean, what the customers' thought process should be?
Right. So, fantastic question. So basically, cost optimization, scalability, custom experience, and ultimately all of this reflects in the bottom line. How do you improve your productivity, increase your profitability, reduce your costs? So this is ultimately all our decisions end up to that, right? And then the customer lifetime value. What is the experience that you are giving to a customer? So what organizations need to understand is moving into cloud is not a technical decision. It is a business decision. It's a strategic decision.
Yep.
As long as you keep it at the CIO level, no disrespect, CIOs need to technically qualify, security needs to get involved, but it's a strategic business decision based on the business, based on where you want to go. So this, not identifying this is one problem for organizations to move forward. Even if they decide, no, I don't want to go to cloud, it should be a business decision. And how that decision is supporting the business to grow. Now, scalability. Now, first of all, let's take cost optimization, right? So now, when you go into cloud, like I said earlier, the upfront cost that you put into going into an on-prem solution is not there because you only pay for what you use. So you really can use the resources that you want for that moment and move out, opposed to a planned CapEx there, you have to put the money up front. And if now, again, another thing that organizations don't do is that you don't get finance involved in these business decisions. Finance doesn't understand going to cloud the benefits. So in this business decision, the finance needs to get involved and understand, hey, what I'm not going to put upfront, I can reinvest to the business. So the cost optimization happens in various ways. Then the scalability, simple thing like even an enterprise or a retail entity, let's take the outdoor season is just crazy, right? So you need to really scale your business. But if you are going to go into hardware or something, you have to just upfront pay, anticipate those scalability and be prepared. But when you go to cloud, you just use auto scale and use the resources and the cloud for that requirement, that period only, and then that's it. So the scalability to go up, down, vertically, horizontally is possible in cloud. The customer experience is actually something that I want to take a little bit more time and explain. This is my fun subject and pet area. End of the day, everything boils down to customers. Now we know how enterprises do everything and anything to satisfy a customer. But I want to take the government sector in this case, Neranjan. We are all customers of the government. We all taxpayers are investors to the government. Government utilizes our money to give a service back to us. Now, this is very important. Where is the government putting the money? Okay. And what are we as citizens, as a customer experience we are getting? When we go to any organization, government organization, we all talk about how the service is bad. So our investment return is not received. A simple study that I did in the recent Candy religious event that took place, we have spent over 1 billion for that short period of time. However, using technology, we could have cut off 75% of that cost. Right? When we had the QR code requirement for fuel allocation, it was a necessity. We all adapted to it. And it reduced. Nobody thinks about the productivity time of people. Now, staying in the queue for something to happen, you're wasting good productivity time. So there are indirect costs that actually doesn't get reflected. The environmental pollution doesn't get accounted for. So there are so many other angles that we can cover in terms of profitability and productivity, which people don't think about. That is given as a benefit by moving into cloud.
That's a great answer, Piumi. I think you spoke about various angles and perspectives on how we can actually see the cloud investment and migration. So I think normally people don't think of these things like that. I mean, they mainly consider the upfront payment or maybe the like the total investment they have to make in 5 years, but they don't see how cost can be saved in various other aspects. Yeah, that's a great answer. So. Now we have a more technical perspective on this. Now, when we are moving from traditional legacy environments to clouds, there are various things that we can do. I mean, we can lift, shift, repurpose, refactor, repurchase, retire, and maybe different things that we can do. So, Shabeer, like if we are migrating from an on-prem environment to cloud environment, so what are the practical steps that we should follow? Maybe what are the challenges that we need to address? So, as a person who is helping customers to technically achieve these things, how do you see it?
So, I mean, you actually answered it, to be very honest, about the fact that they need to first figure out whether they can lift and shift it, whether it's being refactored, whether they're going to retire it. There's a lot of things that they need to first figure out. So the business objectives, like you highlighted at the start, and also like we mentioned, what you're planning to do on the cloud, that's the most important thing, right? Figuring that out. And once you established it, you have a clear idea, okay, this is what I'm going to use it for. This is my business goals. Then you can start, planning the migration. So that can be, then you might have to consider things like, okay, do I have any legacy systems in place that I still have to move there, right? Or do I have to completely let go of some applications that I'm using right now if I have to move to the cloud? Or I mean, it doesn't have to be that everything has to move to the cloud, right? You can have a hybrid infrastructure. Typically, when you move to cloud, it starts with hybrid, and eventually, if you do have to go completely to cloud, you can. But in scenarios where there's an environment that's already running, they have applications that's been built and that's at this point in time being used. So hybrid architectures is, I would say, is mostly considered, but bearing that in mind and what your business goals are, you start prioritizing what those applications are, right? Based on complexity of it, based on criticality of it, whether you want this application the soonest, whether you want to eat the frog and do the hardest one on cloud first, whatever it is, those are all strategies that can vary from organization to organization based on goals and use cases, so on and so forth. And along while they do that migration process of it, it's also very, very important to consider the factor that you have to look at security. Again, something that Piumi mentioned is the fact that just because it's on cloud does not mean that it's secure, right? Just because a document that's is on cloud doesn't mean that's what is confidential on-prem here is not confidential once it goes onto the cloud. So whatever it is, the controls that everyone sets up here in these, within your four walls, will have to also apply to that whole massive cloud that's out there, right? All those clouds, ideally speaking. So that shared responsibility model, all of those things are something that the customers have to be aware of so that they know, okay, fine, these are the responsibilities I have. For these responsibilities, who is it, who can I obviously talk to? And in that space, there are obviously people who like our teams and there's many other SIs in the market who consult and talk about, okay, these infrastructures or these particular requirements, these are the kind of tools you can probably use, or these are the kind of monitoring you have to do. So, because of course, just because you migrate to cloud doesn't mean that once you put it up there, it's going to seamlessly run up there, right? There's a lot of ensuring that it's fine-tuned as per your expectations. And again, something that Piumi mentioned was about the workload, right? How much of it is being utilized. So ensuring all those are monitored, ensuring that you're not overspending, ensuring that whatever application that you put up there is running as expected. And of course, the customers, whoever it is that's using it, right? Again, depending from organization to organization, they have to think of the customer, the experience that the customer has in order to access this particular application that they are either moving to cloud, or should they, let's be safe, let's keep it here on prem. But then again, you also still have to have your traditional infrastructures capable enough to actually cater to that much requests coming in. So there's multiple things to consider when moving to cloud. So there are enough and more people who anyone who's migrated to cloud can consult and talk to, and they in turn will talk about all of this. So clear migration paths, what your business goals are, what your applications are, understanding that security, and of course, depending on organization to organization, you might have different types of regulations or compliances that you have to, standards to comply to. So depending all of those, ensuring those controls are also considered when you are, migrating some application up there, as long as those are, it's good to go. And one very, very important thing also I would like to add in finally is training these users. Like let's just assume it's the IT team that's currently looking at migrating these applications on cloud. It's not just expecting the vendors to understand how the cloud works and and putting it up for you or for the customer or for the enterprise or for whoever it is. It's understanding why and how to leverage the tool as well. So training on those environments, certifications, getting all those, understanding the best practice and all that is key when migrating to cloud. So I think that's what I would say to sum it up.
Yeah, yeah. So I think just to add on what you said, Shabeer, right, you have like in legacy and on-prem environments, you have these large monolithic applications, and you need to figure out whether actually you are going to like you are like going to lift it and put it in
And
the
shift it
cloud
out.
environment, or maybe you are going to like refactor it, or maybe change
Mm,
the architecture, whether whether they are going to change the architecture to a more microservices oriented, container oriented architecture, or maybe server, maybe going into serverless computing. So I think all these things are bound with what Piumi mentioned, business objectives. So I
yep.
have to, I think it's
Yes.
a collective team effort that you need to put. I mean, you can't just take a decision from one angle. And you spoke about shared responsibility matrix as well. I think that gave a really good start for my next question to Lasantha. So Lasantha, how does this shared responsibility matrix or shared responsibility model works in different environments like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service? I mean, how does it work in these different environments?
Okay. If I'm to there is a very nice picture demonstrated by all the cloud vendors out there breaking this up. But if I'm to explain it to somebody in the board level or higher management level, it is based on what you want and what level of control you have. You have to either pay extra or take more responsibility yourself. So if you are going to a software as a service model, everything's done for you, but you have to pay more. If you go for the next leg, platform as a service, you have to do way more than that you would have done in software as a service, but it is going to cost you less. But when you say cost you less, the service offered by the cloud vendor might be lesser cost, but doing it yourself, would it be actually costing you less? Would you require to hire somebody from outside to do a whole bunch of work? If that is the case, how much is the total cost of ownership of that person for a year? And would that justify not paying the extra whatever the amount to go SaaS instead PaaS? Same way, if you want to have the full control over your infrastructure, then you can go for a IaaS. Then again, the moment you go down that path, you need to be able to fully manage that solution and keep it up to date and look after the security of it. Now, something I have mentioned earlier, the paradigm shift and IaaS, I have seen so many people go into cloud and install their servers and still do patching. Like the moment you see that, you realize they have not understood the concept of cloud. The whole point of cloud is they give you new IAM with everything patched. You need to respin it. You need to have it automated. All the data in a separate environment. When the new image comes in, you reflash your server with the new image.
So I just downloaded a picture to help you with your explanation if you need. I don't know whether you can see my screen.
Yeah. So the responsibility model, brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Neranjan. Yeah. So the point I was at is, regardless of the service you choose, like not regardless, before you make the decision to go for IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS, you need to understand how the cloud works. Without having that clear understanding, making a pick just purely based on financial motives would put you in a difficult position and cause you to spend more money. And I would want to touch up on something both Piumi and all three of you touch up on, is we need to understand the business. So if any of you go and search for the open security architecture webpage, they very nicely articulate business informs the IT strategy. IT informs the enterprise strategy. In IT strategy, you have the security architecture included. So including myself in my early days, I come up with the security in mind. I want to secure you, but business doesn't want that. So we need to understand first, one of the big problems we do as IT professionals is we don't care what business want. We want to do the thing for us. But business is there to create value or create value for stakeholders or to make money. So to make money, they need to take certain risks. If the risk materializes, it is our job to make sure that adequate protection is in place, that the impact is minimal to the business. So without that very high level understanding, we are trying to either get people to change environments or try to secure them. So business speaks one language. Well, obviously, we all speak English, but they use a different set of terminologies, and IT professionals use a different set of terminologies. Yeah. And while we're in the same room speaking the same language, we are not understanding each other. So that's my take on it.
Yeah. So Yeah, I mean, you explained, I mean, like basically covered what's displayed here as well. So I will dive more into your favorite subject area, Lasantha. Now, when it comes to cloud, so like, how different are these security threats when it comes to cloud compared with the on-prem environment? What are the new threats that we can see? And what are the security challenges we can see in cloud? I mean, I would like you to give a more technical answer, explaining various threats and everything that we see. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. So 25, 30 years ago, when you're writing a piece of code, having the access keys or the credentials to whatever the other service you access in the code itself was perfectly okay, because service located in your environment, you have the full control over it. So then we came into the cloud era, where we could have our code hosted in free environments, in buckets or code repositories. The moment that comes in, people were still following the old practice and putting their code without making any changes in those public repositories, causing all the keys to be exposed. So that would give full access to the attackers without having to do anything, just by looking at what you are hosting.
Yeah.
One aspect. The other part is, when you are trying to, we had this mindset of parameter security in our on-prem context. We used to think about our network environment or the corporate environment as a fortress of medieval ages. We put firewalls around it and try to protect whatever inside. And we go into the cloud with the same mindset, without realizing that everything in there is, we are sitting in somebody else's environment, and we try to create this virtual environment of a fortress, which we can't, because everything is set up there is owned by somebody else. And it's like me coming to your house and trying to live the life I used to live in my house, without thinking like you would come into to invade my privacy. So if I'm trying to do that, I have to think it differently. I have to take a whole set of different protocols to make sure my environment is secured. Yes, when you go into cloud, the cloud storage is by default encrypted, but the key is owned by the cloud vendor. They can unencrypt the data you host at any time. So, for example, if you are a corporate that is doing business with, your competitor might have a closer relationship with your cloud vendor. I'm just taking these as case scenarios, not real world examples. They could have the capability to influence the cloud owner to request the keys. Or a real world example on that case would be a removed hard disk could be scraped to identify what are the passwords that are being used in your environment. So for those, leading organizations like AWS, Azure, they have certifications to show that we are doing the data destruction securely, and they have all the compliance requirements in the books. But if we talk about the data sovereignty and try to pick up a local cloud vendor, to what extent they can provide the same capability versus, yes, we need to keep the data in our land, because the land of the law is the final say. Because the AWS is more secure, we can't put everything in there, because anytime the legal requirements comes and they get a warrant in US or wherever the data is residing, they are bound by law to reveal all of that. So we don't have any control of that. So when we are making the decision to move between those, I'm not saying don't do this or do this. I'm saying if we are making a decision, we need to be able to understand all the risks involved and make our decision risk informed rather than going it willy-nilly.
Great. I think you used some really interesting analogies to explain how we need to see cloud security and how we need to make decisions. Thank you very much, Lasantha. So since we are talking about the operational aspect of things now, with AI coming into play, with all these sophisticated machine learning algorithms, AI trainings, and new LLMs and models, I'm sure that a lot of people are starting to use cloud more and more, because on-prem infrastructure is not scalable, and you can't spin out good environment within required time limit. So people actually migrating into cloud and using cloud infrastructure. So Shabeer, like, how do you see that? I mean, with AI and all these LLMs coming into play, how do people see cloud as an option? And I mean, how can cloud platforms be optimized to host these heavy workloads? So how do you see that?
Yeah, to answer that question, so I think the best place, I mean, I completely agree with Lasantha with everything to do with security. But in terms of the like having it in place, managing it in terms of the complexity and all of it, and bearing in mind AI, right, which is like extremely resource hungry and demands obviously like proper scalable infrastructures, right? So and it requires very specialized kind of setups, right? More GPUs, CPUs, storages, so on and so forth. So because it has to obviously have a lot of data sets, right? You spoke about different sorts of LLMs, and that the backend is a massive data set that it has to have. So I believe with AI's growth, the adoption of cloud at least is immense. But what I can additionally say is all those vendors who are already on cloud are also providing some sort of AI now, right now. Since we work
Hmm.
for cybersecurity technologies, but I can tell you right away is certain with the fact that AI and with the fact that sorry with the fact that the cloud infrastructure is being utilized by these vendors, their value addition is giving them some sort of new AI functionality to leverage their security platform, do monitoring on cloud, or do that monitoring part of it using AI, so that you're not now using your staff to do that. So to 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 actually get to that point, you obviously won't be able to do that if it's a traditional endpoint system where you have your servers running here. Then you need to have a different AI setup here, and that's not practically not possible. So I believe with cloud again being the enabler, it has definitely enabled AI to be accessible to literally anyone and everyone now. That's something that I'd like to really highlight. And along with that, with the intense or with the increased usage of AI, it's only going to increase the usage of cloud as well, right? So
Correct.
there's the using like serverless or containerized AI pipelines. That
Hmm.
all these are all things that these developers could use now. Back then, these were not the case. They had to probably code it from scratch from A to Z. But now with certain containerized, things available, it's more flexible for them to get these running as well. And that is something I would say is possible solely because of the fact that cloud is, giving them that possibility as well. Right. So it like I mean, about the fact that data governance that we spoke about, where it resides and data residency and all that, that of course is I would say is like a real pointer that we have to stress on, because depending on what AI you are using, where these AI platforms are sitting, where these data sets are. If you have data residency issues, you're not going to be able to use that AI platform and feed in some of your data, because that's obviously going somewhere else, somewhere completely outside your purview, right? So uh, you need to ensure, okay, I mean, anyone who's leveraging this cloud AI should of course know that this is data that is going outside. But then again, with the fact that cloud infrastructures are complementing AI, there's only going to be immense or more usage of AI in the future. That's what I see. So, and I spoke about like vendors now also having AI inbuilt, so it's making life more easier, right? Things like monitoring certain logs to monitoring incidents and stuff is now being managed by these AI tools. So that is again possible because it's on the cloud. So I believe with these intense growth of AI and expectation of massive workloads, I believe cloud is the best place. But then again, if you're looking at having your own private AI, as LLMs in here, then of course you can probably talk to OREL.
Yes, actually, so you guys are actually making my life very, very easy, because like you are actually creating the context for my question. So actually, I was going to ask something from Piumi as my next question. So, Shabba, you spoke about data governance, data protection, and hosting data, and compliance and governance and everything. So, Piumi, so how do you see I mean, like, it's a timely topic because we are getting ourselves ready for the Personal Data Protection Act, which will come into play in the next few months. I mean, it was postponed by 6 months, but in the next few months, we will see it in play. People are talking about data protection, data hosting, and even in the conversation that you mentioned in the parliament, people were speaking of data hosting and how the data protection can be achieved. I don't know whether they understand these concepts, but actually they were at least mentioning the right technical jargon. So, right. So, what's the situation in Sri Lanka when it comes to data governance, data protection, and the compliance regulatory aspect, especially in the government sector, and very importantly in the BFSI sector in Sri Lanka? So, how do you see that?
Yeah, so this is a very timed question, as you said, and as Shabeer and Lasantha mentioned, security is very important. To answer this, first of all, the other thing that I want to re-emphasize and mention is cloud is secure. However, each user has a responsibility to also keep it secure. So you can enforce so many policies and SOPs and all of that. However, as a user, you have a responsibility when you are using. So from there onwards, taking your question, if in the recent past, I'm sure everybody is aware of some government breaches that happened, banking, certain breaches that happened. I had actually day before yesterday a supplier telling me his entire quotation was out there for people to see in detail. So this is scary, right? So in a world like this, and in fact, just to add a little bit more light to this, I always said 30 years ago, 20 years ago, all the sci-fi movies that we saw are coming in to reality now. So if you really want to see what is happening in the future, go back and watch the sci-fi movies. Now, to secure all of this, right, there are regulatories. So the banking sector has their own regulators, central bank has their regulators, the PDP Act, all of that is enforced. So people are starting to ask the question, where is our data stored? Who has access to it? Is it really secure? And then some people asking, is there a backdoor to the data? Can someone really go and get the data out? So in terms of compliance, the BFSI, of course, is governed by the central bank. The central bank policy is there. The central bank policy, I would say it's not so straightforward, but I would wish that central bank would give a much better concrete respond to the data side of things, because it gives, ultimately it says the responsibilities of the board of directors and the CIO. It doesn't say you can go to cloud, you can't go to cloud. It gives some guidelines. So I think taking the global context and our regional context, we can definitely make it a little bit more solid and give some proper solid guidelines to how to move to the cloud. And like I said earlier, the data classification, what data can be right, what data can be in the cloud, in a public cloud, and what data can be in a private cloud. So it's that data classification is not clear. However, there is of course a central bank policy and a guideline. And then of course, as you said, the PDP Act is there, which is still being finalized. And once the PDP Act comes, then we will have a guideline onto our personal data where it can reside. And the 27017 cloud security is one of the most important certifications a cloud can have, and which is enforced by central bank, that a cloud service provider must have to have the data. And the disaster recovery jurisdiction, what is the distance between a DR and a primary, all these things, if it is defined properly, would be good. Then the healthcare sector, the previous ICTA was working on a PDP Act for the healthcare sector, which is not enforced yet and it's not out, but I believe they are working on it. So even simple things like when we're discussing about the PDP Act, organizations collect a bill or a receipt from the employee to pay the insurance, OPD insurance. Now, we don't think too much, but the pharmacy bill has my personal information that I am giving to the organization, which tells for what I'm taking this medicine for. Now, defining and understanding and having a regulation for these kind of things are important, as we know the world is changing and what information can be used for what reasons we don't know. It is yet to figure out. So the data classifications and policies on the healthcare side. This is not just on government level side, but as an individual user, you don't really think when you're paying the insurance or you're trying to claim your insurance, the information that you are providing can actually lead to so many other problems, right? Then in terms of government especially, right, there is a misconception of data residency and sovereign cloud. Sovereign cloud is a different thing and data residency is a different thing. So you can have a sovereign cloud, but data residency might not be there. So as a government, what is our policy? Do we want data residency and a sovereign cloud, or are we okay to have a sovereign cloud without data residency? So these policies need to be in place for us to move. So the infrastructure for this is being built, but unfortunately, it's not laid out and executed yet in an effective manner. So even the cloud vendors have a responsibility. They need to be transparent about where the data is residing, because as I believe Shabeer or Lasantha also mentioned, where some now Azure or some other public clouds, they are bound legally to provide data if requested, right? So what do we do in instances like that as a country, as an individual, as an organization? So the regular audits, the certifications, the security certifications and checks and balances, all these needs to be in place. So as a government, what is our policy? Do we have a national SOC? Do we have a national NOC and a SOC? What sort of policy are we going to have? These are not still clearly thought through and expedited. And now we have multiple checkings. We have a crib, we have a central bank, we have individual banks, we have then service providers. None of them are connected. They have their own silos of doing things. So all of this has to be connected. There has to be a digital platform, a backbone that supports this. And finally, as it is also important as regulators and cloud providers to create that awareness, give that education to everyone, right? This is not something just the management, the government can only do. So the providers have a responsibility also to educate and give them that knowledge and know-how of going to cloud and what is cloud and the advantages, benefits, and the risk involved in it. So the silver lining all of that is when compliance is done, it becomes a competitive advantage for the company, for any cloud vendor as well, to provide those so they can give those as a solution, reducing risk mitigation or improvement or uptime. When these compliances are met, it's also a benefit for the vendor, right? So finally, the bottom line is, yes, stakes are really high in terms of security and compliances needed, but also the opportunity to build trust and the foundation of a digital transformation is there. So compliance is not a blocker. It's how I see it is a gateway to going to do cloud right for Sri Lanka.
Actually, I think there's the question in the chat as well. I think it aligns with aligns with the answer that you gave. So he's asking whether regulatory environment in Sri Lanka is supportive enough for banks to migrate their core systems into cloud. I think the guidelines and information provided by central bank is very ambiguous, because they don't specifically say you do this or you don't do this. I mean, so it's very ambiguous from my point of view. Shabba, I would like to extend this question to you as well. So I'm sure that you discuss this with a lot of C-level executives and CEOs and CIOs. So how is the banking sector adaptation and view on migrating to cloud?
So they haven't necessarily moved to cloud, right? Just especially because of the data residency issues that we have. and like everything that was highlighted. So, but in reality, it again depends on like what sort of information is going on to the cloud as well, right? There are certain instances where certain customers, I don't want to mention names, but some customers have gone onto cloud for a selected subset of users. Maybe they're using cloud for maybe a selected set of users who are on O365. And so it doesn't mean that they have not gone onto cloud. Technically speaking, Piumi mentioned this at the start that we are somehow or the other 60% of organizations are using some sort of cloud, right? Even going on to a PDF generation or a Word to PDF converter is technically some sort of cloud service at the end of the day. So usage is there on cloud, but then again, in terms of what data is going onto the cloud, depending on that, there are certain usages. But again, there is no way to prove that what are the other cloud services they are not using. This whole shadow IT and the kind of applications that the IT team itself does not know that the individuals within the organization is using. So I believe there are certain applications that they might be using, but it's not procured, not purchased in terms of data residing there. Again, depending on what data they're putting on the cloud, there are some banks that would be using some cloud services, but not in terms of everything on cloud, not in terms of web applications or core banking data or no transaction, none of that going on to cloud, of course. 100% no right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, Lasantha, the next question is to you. I mean, now in most of the enterprise environments in Sri Lanka, so you have worked with LSCG, and now we are working with Cisco Lab. So I'm sure that they are adopting a multi-cloud strategy where they work with different cloud environments, maybe AWS, Azure, or other public clouds, or maybe any other cloud service provider. So when you are handling multiple cloud environments, so identity and access management and encryption and data protection and other security aspects become very, very complex, and you need to keep the performance and user experience at the optimal level as well. So how do you handle these things? What are the challenges that you face, and you know how can organizations effectively manage these problems and face them? Yeah.
That's a very loaded question. I'll try my best to cover all the aspects you touch upon. So if I start up with identity and access management, if you might remember, about 25 years ago, there was this massive argument whether you should be using one account with federated access or have multiple accounts with multiple passwords. So back then, that was a massive concern. Like even the high-level people could not get a handle on. Different people were arguing on different opinions. Over time, now we are in a place that we try to federate everything, use one account for everything, and try to have a stronger password and log that down. At the same time, if I'm naming names, but I'm not trying to shame them. If you look at the AWS's authentication architecture, they are trying to completely deviate from that single identity and access management model. They are doing their own thing. So if you ever have tried to, let alone going multi-cloud, if you are from a Microsoft shop and try to seriously use AWS cloud integrated to your environment, you know what I'm talking about. That getting the permission right in the microservices mapped to your Entra ID is a nightmare. So this is just dealing with two cloud environments. Well, not even two cloud environments. It's just one cloud service from a one vendor and a cloud service. So when you throw Azure and GCP into the mix, them being the leading ones, you have a myriad of identity and access management problems. So many vendors claim they can fix it. I have worked with 3-4 of them. Well, you have worked with vendors. They claim, and when you try to actually implement, that's a different story. So as of today, correct me in my statement, I am not aware of an identity and access management solution that could support across at least the 3 major cloud vendors. Regardless the effort you put in, you have to have an army of people just to manage the identity and access management, even when you have Entra ID and federated authentication. like with the state of the things, this should be just few clicks. But no, every major organization, they have minimum 2 to 3 people sitting there to sort out identity and access management. And in big organizations, the IAM team is larger. So, well, if there are anybody who's trying to come up with new solutions, well, that's something you can look at. Sorting out identity and access management for multiple multi-cloud environment. So second part is the second question of the loaded question of Neranjan is data protection. Yeah. Data protection itself is a different beast, right? When you simply try to implement DLP in an organization, like you don't have a budget to buy everybody iPhone and like enforce all of your corporate policies. And when you try to have your policies push onto their BYOD, well, end users don't want to have MDM enabled on their, well, phones they have paid themselves, phones they have bought on their own money. Well, the funny bit is people don't want to find out, people don't want the corporation to find out where your geolocation is, which is the complaint about the MDM, about the major pushback when you try to do BYOD with mobile devices. People say, yeah, I don't want my location to be found. But in every other aspect in Sri Lanka, we have zero privacy. We don't care where our ID details are leaked, anything and everything to impersonate us is leaked out there. We don't care about that, but only when an organization is trying to push that, people are well, getting upset about it. I'm not complaining. I'm saying, as a culture, like we are not used to privacy. Come on, we grew up in an environment where if a friend comes visit you, especially an opposite gender friend comes and visit you, entire neighborhood talks about it. So coming from that, talking about privacy, getting people to thinking in the lines of privacy is difficult. So transferring that into IT environment with all the technical complexities, again, depending on the complexity of the environment and what you want to secure. If you are having a hybrid environment where you keep some of the data in your environment and put some of the stuff in the cloud, having one solution is not going to fix the problem you have. Yeah. So that itself is an architectural problem when you're looking at the multi-cloud environment. So again, the third point, encryption. There used to be a time people thought encryption would fix everything. Now, all the different cloud vendors provide their own encryption solution where they keep the master key in their environment. And if you want to be serious about encryption and have your HSM in your own environment, it costs you more than you would spend for a year in your cloud bills. Yeah. So it is a balancing act, unfortunately. I have to bounce back to the previous statement I have made. Business need to understand their requirement. And based on that, we need to provide the solution. And one thing I would over and over and over emphasize is yes, cloud service providers provide all these wonderful microservices. You can spin it up in minutes. But if you do not plan your strategy, you would spend all that amount in reverse. You could spin it up in minutes, but you would spend the next year, 2 or 3 trying to fix them and secure them. So please try to think the big picture and come up with a solution and stick to it. That's a short answer I could give to dealing with multi-cloud environments.
So I think for my loaded question, you get a good, very good answer covering all the aspects, and I could clearly see that even though you said that you are not complaining regarding the privacy aspect of Sri Lankan people, you were actually complaining. So, but anyway, so
there are just something to also add into what Lasantha said. So we spoke about encryption and all that, but not mean to scare anyone who's on the call. But with this whole quantum cryptography and all these coming in, with quantum computers coming in, encryption is no longer going to be what we all think it is, right? It's going to be we're going to need more security, and the reason I also barged in to say this is most vendors out there are also now talking about this. They're also talking about the fact that, okay, let's not talk about your AES 256 encryption anymore with quantum computing coming in, because it's not going to be secure anymore, right? So it's only going to grow with the adoption of how the rate that everything is happening at right now. So and that's why I just unmuted myself to say this sessions like this is very valuable, because for those who join these sessions, you get to know this kind of information, because unless and of course you do this reading, this is the another method of getting it. And thanks Neran for setting up sessions like this. It's very valuable, I believe.
Yeah. So thanks Shabba for bringing that thing, because like quantum cryptography and quantum computing is a whole new topic that we need to discuss separately. But as you correctly mentioned, cryptography is going to be something obsolete with I mean, not the cryptographic concept, but the cryptography that we have right now, unless we come up with quantum cryptography mechanisms. So. And Lasantha, one more question to you. Now we talk about zero trust, never trust, always verify, and you took the analogy of comparing cloud into someone else's house. So if you are going to someone else's house, then we can't anyways trust them, right? So how do you apply these zero trust principles in cloud environments?
Okay, so on a non-technical point of view, imagine yourself living in a serviced hotel or a serviced apartment. Like, if you can think along the lines of things that would happen every day and the things you need to protect yourself against, this would cover the entire question, because doesn't matter, you are given a key card, the management, the service staff, they could come in. And in the hotel room itself, they provide you the state-of-the-art safe. Any manager can come in and open. And where are you going? I mean, in a reputed hotel, you would expect there won't be any cameras inside the room itself, but everywhere else they do. So if you're used to like walking around in your shorts or worse, in your underwear in your house, if you try to do that in hotel, you can guarantee there are some buggers looking at you, laughing at you. So if you take the same analogy into the cloud environment, you have the freedom to do anything and everything in your local network, right? You could spin up any amount of microservices, Kubernetes clusters, or run any small servers and do whatever the testing you want, because you have the mindset that you are inside your network. But the moment you move into cloud, everything sits out there and you are not in your own safe space. The thing that makes me laugh is, even though cloud environment by default try to make things secure, I mean, when S3 buckets first came in, like they were keeping, like when you're spinning up a bucket, they would make it private anyways. But if you have seen the amount of data disclosures happen on public S3 buckets, it's horrendous. So people element, we can't, I mean, no amount of security or technical controls can fix the people element. We need to take the people element in a different approach. City of Troy, it was undefeatable, right? The enemy left a Trojan horse like buggered in a day. Constantinople lasted for 1,000 years, and some bugger forgot to close the service gate, destroyed. So no amount of technical or military security controls in place would protect your organization if you do not get your people to understand the meaning of what you're doing. So this is not the question you asked, but I need to emphasize the human factor. We need to pay more attention to it, as well as we are paying attention to technical controls, because it is equally important people understand what they're doing or why these controls are out there, rather than just complaining about it.
Right, great. So I think so we discussed a lot of concepts, technologies, ideas, strategies, various thought process, perceptions, misconceptions, and different contexts in Sri Lanka, public and private sector. So since the clock is ticking, so I would like to wrap this session up with maybe one or two questions to you guys. So I mean, we can't forget SMEs in Sri Lanka when we talk about cloud. I mean, even though we don't actually realize it, SMEs actually contribute a lot to the Sri Lankan economy. So I'm just opening this question up to anyone who would like to take it. So how can SMEs adopt cloud technologies? What best practices can they follow? What are the advices that you can give to SMEs when with regards to cloud adaptation and migration? I'm opening this up. Anyone can take it actually.
Neranjan, I would like to answer this first. Again, SME is one of my pet areas. Having started having a business some time ago, running, it was a manufacturing business, right? Back in the day, even to count the faulty production, we had to have employees manually counting, and then the data entry. So we had about over 100 people working for a lot of labor manual work. But today, with technology, all can be done automatically, and the machine learning and all of that support. So your question is a technical and a business answer, right? So especially in Sri Lanka, I've traveled around the country talking to SMEs and providing technology solutions from CRMs to ERPs to so many other solutions, right? One of the biggest problems that we faced is that Sri Lankans, we want something really hard, a tangible solution. And if it is not tangible, if the security is not tangible, if the solution is not tangible, it's not accepted. So this is something the first generation is mainly facing. So as you go around to the second and third generation, they are more adaptive to technologies and are willing to invest on it. But then you take the decision to adapt to technology, then the problem comes the continuation. Okay, at the hype of things, okay, you'll start using it, you will deploy it and see the look and feel, but then there is no support for them to continue this. Now, from a vendor's perspective also, there's a cost involved because this is scattered around. In order to give the service the SMEs need, because of lack of education and understanding on technology, the cost is high for a solution provider to continuously give that support. So that enablement is also a practical issue. So unless and otherwise you are educated from technologically educated, it is very difficult for a SME to adapt. So looking at channels, indirect channels like banks and chambers, they can play a huge role in this to help support the SMEs move into cloud and other technologies. The other side of this is that if you take the SME, for them to digitalize themselves, there is no financing module in this country that is supporting technology adaptation, right? You can get a manufacturing loan, you can get a working capital loan, but there is nothing that is supporting the digital transformation, which is a direct impact on increasing the productivity, reducing the cost, and also the profitability. So in terms of governance, we also need to look at how do we support as a financial organization, as a government, for these SMEs to move to digital transformation. That is another side. And then the education of compliance, the support. Now, SMEs are not just supporting the local economy, but they are into export. So what is the support that they can get moving into technology to improve and increase the export business? These aspects of using technologies, maybe e-commerce and beyond that, right, can be done to support them. At a chamber event, I met this lady during COVID time. She had started doing this Hanukur business, right? And what she did was she put her name, and she didn't know what branding was. So she put her name, and then she thought it was a package. She needed to do a nice package. And then her daughter comes and says, Amma, put this on Facebook. We can sell through Facebook. Now, without knowing, they are moving into digital, right? Without knowing. But they didn't know what branding was. They didn't know what digital marketing was. But without knowing, they were doing it. But if we give that education to them and that upliftment, they will definitely get more business, increase their productivity, and improve. And then the intellectual improvement, understanding these technologies. So education is very important, and indirect channels should be used to encourage. That's why I brought in the finance aspect of it, because we need to give them that support also to move into digital transformation, and show them that by moving into digital transformation, doing these digital transformations, that they can increase their business. So this is a very important and a vital thing. As you said, the contribution from the SME is really huge for the country, and for us to move to the next level, we do need to support. And just finally, the startups of Sri Lanka, IT sector, these startups, the most important commodity in an IT company are the people, right? Which is not recognized. Now, how can the finance organizations support uh, giving capital for for a company, for a startup not having any asset? So we are talking about supporting the SME, and we are talking about digital transformation, but this infrastructure level decisions has to be made to support these SMEs. And finally, even in Sri Lanka, if you want to take a project, they ask for reference. So how can a SME give reference if nobody gives them the opportunity? So there has to be opportunity created for them to get reference, then to take it to the global market. So adaptation of technology and cloud is very important, especially with SaaS applications that are coming in, where they don't have to invest a lot of money, and it's always a pay-as-you-go subscription base. Support and infrastructure support for them to adapt. Education is very important. This is my take on this. Neranjan, you're on video.
Go on, Piumi.
So thank you, Piumi. Anyone would like to add anything on that?
Yes, Neranjan, I would like to again, being a security person, I always see the potential risks involved. Personally, I fully agree with Piumi's statement. As a SME, having a SaaS platform gives them everything. It's like buying a car. You have the security built in, everything you need to operate with adequate amount of security. But if the person buying the car haven't had adequate amount of driving lessons, they could run it off of a cliff, and none of these controls would matter. So a point highlighted by Piumi, we need to help them get to that level of knowledge. The technology is out there, a whole bunch of SaaS are out there, but we need to find ways to educate them to how to use them properly, not adequately.
Okay, right. So there's one more question in the chat. So there's a question asking whether edge computing would actually handle the complexities of data residency and security aspects. Would anyone like to take that up? How edge computing can help with data protection and security?
Something I can probably comment on that is, well, edge computing would help with data residency issues, because if you think about it, it's residing in your locally itself. It's not crossing borders or leaving leaving the country, and regulation wise it might be okay. But then again, when you think about it security wise, I think there's more risks also abound. As long as you know what the risks are, it'll be okay, because when you start doing edge computing, your data is processed closer to where it's being generated, right? So it makes it easier to access. It's faster to access compared to like a cloud, according to how edge computing systems work. But then again, the security part of it, right? You're increasing your attack surface, so you need to be able to, whatever data that resides in there has to be encrypted. There's a lot of controls that you will have to set. So it again varies on your use cases, varies on what your business objectives are. Based on that, you would choose whether it's edge computing, whether it's cloud, or whether you just forget about everything and stick to your on-prem setups.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, in one way, actually, you are not sending data to the central cloud system and you are reducing the attack surface. But since you are expanding the number of end devices, then you are increasing the attack surface as well. And there are a lot of issues when it comes to like processing power and the resources to provide better security at end devices. So as you correctly mentioned, it depends on the use case and how we want to adapt it. Yeah, I think we have reached the end of the session. Thank you very much, guys. I really enjoyed the conversation. It was lovely to have you in this evening. And it was a very, very interesting conversation. And you guys made my life extremely easy by providing context to the next question I wanted to ask. Thank you very much for that. And thanks to all the participants who joined for the session. So we have 10 more sessions to come, and we will put all the links and dates and everything in social media. Please follow us and attend the sessions and spread the word as well. So we are trying to educate our people in Sri Lanka on these technologies and how to achieve digital trust. That's our objective. So thanks, guys, for being here. So have a good night and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.